really like to make this a very interactive webinar. We will encourage you to ask questions as we go along. You can do that by either sending something to me in the question box, or you can raise your hand and I'll be able to see you raise your hand as well. Wendy, we've got 6 people on the line with us right now. And I know we're hoping for another 5, so hopefully they'll join us as we go. But we're also going to be recording today's learning webinar on certification so that others have the opportunity to see it after the event, and we will make sure that we put that up on the certification webpage. So with that, Wendy, I actually think I'm going to turn it over to you so we can get going. I know you've got lots to share.
Well, thanks, Amelia. And thanks everybody for being on the call and the webinar today. As Amelia mentioned, I've been chairing a task force that was convened by the IAP2 USA Board of Directors to develop the professional certification program, and we began our work in November of 2013. Since then, we've been meeting approximately twice a month, and we've had 2 face-to-face meetings. The members of the task force include Deborah Dewar from Scottsdale, Arizona, Tina Geiselbrecht from Austin, Texas, Cassie Hemphill from Missoula, Montana, Hannah Litzenberger from Seattle, Washington, and I live in Loveland, Colorado, and we have 2 international members, Brenda Pichette from Ottawa, Canada, and Ken Smith from South Africa. And we get our staff support from Amelia Shaw and Jennifer Armstrong. And as Amelia just explained, this webinar is to tell you about the professional certification program and how you can apply. And I'm ready for the next slide. So just a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to provide a little bit of a history and talk, provide an overview of the certification program, talk about the core competencies, the application process, provide some key dates, and then these are slightly out of order. I'm going to tell you about some things that are new in the program at the end and then take questions. But if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to go ahead and let us know. We want to make sure you understand everything. So, next slide. Just a tidbit of history. We've had, for a long time, we've had people that after they completed taking the IAP2 training, claiming that they were certified, and that was a bit of a problem because certification implies that there's been some sort of an assessment to demonstrate someone's skills and capabilities, and really all they had done was taken the course and got a certificate of attendance in the course. So the concept has been kicked around for a number of years, and then with the blessings of the IAP2 Federation, IAP2 USA took the lead on developing a program for the organization with a goal of hoping that we would develop something that our fellow affiliates would be able to adapt or adopt as they see fit. So in conducting our work, we started with a review of professional certification programs that were offered by other organizations for professionals like facilitators and architects, planners, and people that do public relations work to get a feel for how those programs typically run. And then we surveyed IAP2 members to identify the skills and competencies that they felt were important to be included. And then we came up with an assessment process. IAP2 USA had a pilot of our program in Portland in September of 2015. And our friends to the north, the Canadians, picked it up and ran with it. They have now had 2 pilot assessment centers, one in November of 2016 and one that concluded 2 days ago in Calgary. And so we've taken the lessons of those pilots into consideration in getting ready for our next certification assessment center in the U.S. this year. Next slide. So there's been 3 pilots to date, 1 in the United States and 2 in Canada, and we are lucky to say, or happy to say, proud to say that there's 4 people in the United States that have awarded the Master Certified Public Participation Professional in the United States. Theresa Gunn who is with Gun Communications out of Phoenix, Arizona. John Godek, who is with the Participation Company out of Phoenix, Arizona. Doug Sarno, who is also with the Participation Company, and he's from Washington, D.C. And Stephen Wolf, who is with JEO Consulting in Omaha, Nebraska. And on behalf of IEP2 USA, I'd like to say that I'm really proud of these 4 individuals for being early adopters and jumping into the program while we were still learning how to do it. So we're pretty proud of them. At any rate, next slide. So just to give you a little bit of an overview, we have 2 levels. We have the Certified Public Participation Professional and the Master's Certified Public Participation Professional. We assess their performance against 29 criteria that have been organized into 5 core competencies. And I'll tell you more about this in a minute. There is a prerequisite for the certification program, and that is completion of IEP2's training program, 5-day training, that is currently called the Foundations in Public Participation. It was formerly the Public Participation Certificate program. But it's the same program. If you took it 10 years ago, you're still eligible. You've still completed the prerequisite. And there's a 3-step assessment process for getting the CP3 level of certification. So next slide. And so I'm pleased to announce today that we're going to be having an assessment center in 2017. The application period is open now. And we'll close. We've made a decision this morning to extend the application period just to give people, I know it's really hard to do this kind of thing in the summertime, so we're going to close our application period on August 11th. And I'll give you more information about dates later, but the assessment center will be held, assuming we get enough candidates, on November 17th and 18th later this year. We will be picking the location based on where people are coming from so that we can, to the extent possible, minimize expenses for everyone participating. Next slide, please. So first I want to introduce the 5 core competencies. We went out with a survey to IEP2 membership. It did not include just practitioners in the United States, but we had people worldwide make contributions of what they thought the knowledge, skills, behaviors, attitudes, competencies, capabilities that we should be looking for. And we massaged those into what we called the core competencies, and we shared those core competencies with membership and got a little bit more feedback. And so those form the basis of the program. The certification program assesses applicants' performance against those 29 criteria. They are organized into the 5 criteria, core competencies. So core competency number 1 is public participation process planning and application skills, and there's 12 criteria in that category. Then we have public participation event planning and implementation skills, and there's 6 criteria there. Then we have appropriate use of public participation techniques. We have 4 criteria in that category. And then 6 criteria in public participation communication skills, and then 1 criterion in the public participation people skills. And don't let this fool you. It doesn't mean that people skills are less important. It just means that they've been lumped together in one kind of large criterion. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of a look at what these look like. You can get this on our website. So the screenshot right now is of Core Competency 1.0, which is the public participation process planning and application. And the criteria are listed in the left column, and then the quality standard in the middle for CP3 is the statement against which we are assessing candidates. So for the first one, work with the client to state the decision to be made, describe the decision-making process, and the role that the public might play in that decision-making process. So the quality standard is the candidate works with the client to develop a full understanding of the decision to be made, the decision-making process, and how public input might improve the decision. If someone is not yet ready for certification, the pre-certification statement would be more true, and that is candidate is unable to demonstrate the ability to work with a sponsor to clarify the decision to be made, the decision-making process, or how public input might be used to support the decision-making process. So if you're thinking about applying, I would encourage you to go through all of the criteria and decide for yourself whether you think you can meet the quality standard that is listed for CP3. So the second, third, and fourth columns illustrate the assessor's thinking about where we can find evidence for each of the criteria. So there's the application, the case study response, and the assessment center, and I'll talk a little bit more about these in a minute. But that gives you some insight into where assessors will be looking for evidence.
And Wendy, I'm just going to jump in for a moment because we've had a few other people join us while you've been talking.
Oh,
so
good.
I just want to let people know that this is meant to be interactive, so if you have any questions as we're proceeding, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or pop something in the question box. Sorry to interrupt, Wendy.
No, that's fine. And I'm going to sort of assume people will ask questions if they need to. So next I want to talk a little bit about the three-step certification process. So we, it wasn't just important to come up with the criteria, but we also had to figure out how we were going to look for those criteria. And so there's a three-step certification process. Step one is candidates submit an application and a professional portfolio for consideration by the assessors. Successful candidates that their applications are accepted will then be invited to prepare a public participation plan in response to a case study that we present. And then the third, presuming they're successful in that step, they are invited to attend an assessment center. So I want to talk a little bit about where we look for things. There were 6 criteria that when all was said and done, we decided they really had to be assessed in person, that we were not capable of discerning whether someone had met those quality standards unless we actually had a chance to take a look at them and observe them. So 6 are assessed primarily at the assessment center. And similarly, 8 are assessed primarily in the case study submissions. So those 14, really the final scoring doesn't happen until after the application process. Similarly, there are 5 that are really only looked at in the application. We don't need to see them again once we've seen evidence of them. So the rest of them are looked at more than once, and the gist of it is that our opinion of the worst case scenario is that someone's application is accepted, and then we invite them to prepare a case study response, and we figure out later that they're really not ready, and that's not a good scenario. So we do look for evidence of more criteria in the application than the 5 that are only assessed there, and it's really so that we can have some level of confidence that someone is ready to go on in the process. So next slide, please, Amelia. So this will just give you a little bit of an overview of the application. We're looking for some contact and background information and professional references. Then we look for experience using a variety of P2 techniques. We ask for 3 project descriptions. Then we ask for responses to questions about professional experience and knowledge. And then finally, we invite submission of work examples in a portfolio. And I'm going to talk about each of these in a little bit more depth in a minute. But all of this is, the point of it is to collect evidence that somebody has the competencies related to the specific criteria. So the next slide talks about what's in part 1, which is the contact and background information. We Want to know your status of being an IIP2 member. Only IIP2 members are eligible to get certified. We want to see evidence that you took the IIP2 training, so there's a question about when and where you took the training and who was the trainer. We will ask for a resume, and this is just so we can consult with it and get a bigger picture on what all you've accomplished over the course of your work to date. There is a question about why you're seeking certification, and this is really just to sort of help us understand who's seeking it and why. And then we do ask for 2 references. These 2 references are people that you have a level of confidence that they will be able to speak about your capabilities relative to the core competencies. I'll be honest with you, we hope we don't have to call them, but if we need to corroborate any information that you've presented in your application, we will contact them. So it's not like a professional reference for a job. It's people that have knowledge about the way you approach your work and can attest to your performance against the criteria that we're looking for information for. So that's the background information. The second part of the application asks for evidence of your work using a variety of P2 techniques. There's a list of the 39 techniques that are covered in the Foundation's training, and in this application we're looking for your experience in at least 10 techniques at least 3 levels of the IAP2 spectrum. And so we're asking you to describe how you've done each technique in a very specific example, why it was selected as a technique, and your reflections on how well it worked. You are welcome to suggest different techniques than those 39 that are listed in the Foundation's training, but we need an adequate explanation of what you did for us to be able to evaluate it. So the next page just gives an example of what we're looking for. This is the same example that's in the application, and it's just an example of how someone might write up their experience using a telephone hotline. This describes what was done and attempts to reflect on how it went. It demonstrates the level of the spectrum that it was at and the reason why this technique was chosen. For your information, this particular example is 67 words, and so for each of your descriptions we're looking for between 50 and 75 words. So the next, yes, thank you. The next part of the application is we ask for 3 project descriptions. For these project descriptions, we're looking for a description of the project and your role in it, a listing of the P2 objectives that program had and the level of the IAP2 spectrum, a listing of the techniques that you chose to use and the rationale for their selection, a statement of the communication objectives that you had to support your success in accomplishing your P2 objectives, and then a list of the communication materials that were used for that project. We are asking for 3 project descriptions, and we want you to limit your descriptions to 500 words and 2 pages. So this isn't write a book on it, but it's to give us enough background on those projects so that we have a good sense about what happened. If you could go to the next page, Amelia. This gives you an example of the format that's at the top of each project description. And please feel free to use the labeling 1A, 1B, 1C, etc. so we know what we're looking at. We would like you to provide us a little bit of background. Who is the project sponsor? What's the time frame? And the approximate amount of the budget, if you can. I know some of this work may have been done quite a while ago, but at any rate, tell us as much as you can. I want to point out a couple things. The project descriptions are not scored. We are asking for them because Part 4, you will be relying on those project descriptions to answer your questions. So it's important for you to understand that we really do need to know as much as we can about the projects within the 500 words and 2 pages. but these are not actually scored. So the next page is part 4 that I just referred to. These are project questions, and for a total of 22 questions, we'll ask you for 150 words or less in describing your answer to the question. And let's go ahead and look at the next page. You'll see that for 4.1, you will put your project name and then respond to the question. In this case, describe how you worked with a client to determine the decision to be made, the decision-making process to be used, and how public input would be used to improve the decision. The client may have been internal or external to your organization. And this says criterion 1.1. So that corresponds with the criteria and core competencies that I shared with you already. So if the question doesn't make sense to you, go back to the criterion, and that will give you a hint as to what we're looking for. So in order to help you write a concise answer, that's why we're asking you to select project descriptions that will allow you to answer as many questions as possible so that you can focus your answer in this question on the specific criterion rather than having to explain a lot about the project. So that's the explanation for why we're asking for the project descriptions, is to help you answer the questions that are in part 4. And there are 22 questions. This is the bulk of your time in responding to the application will be in part 4. So then part 5, the portfolio, is an opportunity for you to provide further evidence of your work that relates to the core competencies. And this is really all about you taking a look at how you were able to respond to the questions and putting your best forward in terms of being able to prove what you've done. This is an evidence-based professional certification program, and the assessors are looking for proof that you've done it. This is not just an opportunity to brag, but we want you to be able to demonstrate what you've done. And so the portfolio is an opportunity for you to document what you've done. And I would suggest for your consideration, there is a list of criteria in the portfolio description that you might want to look at, but I would ask you to consider 1.3, 1.5, 1.12, 3.1, and 4.5, because those are the criteria that are never going to be evaluated again. And so if we're not convinced, that the assessors are not convinced that you can meet those criteria based on your answers to part 4, then consider including something in your portfolio to prove it. So you're invited to provide up to 10 examples. They could be documents or videos or audio files or graphics. We don't care. Could you go on to the next page?
Just before we do, Gladys has a quick question, and we've just got another question coming in. So just give me just give me a second here. Just let me get back here. Hang on a second, Wendy.
No worries. I'm glad people are asking.
So Gladys was asking about the criteria again. So the criteria they really need to make sure that they've just done really well. You listed off a series of criteria. I think it was the 5 or 6 criteria that we only look for at the application stage.
Can I share in the chat? Yes, I can.
Yep.
I'm going to put those 5 numbers in the chat.
Okay, that sounds great. And actually, I think it's Vaishnavi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. She was also asking for the same thing. So just they want to just make sure that that they know which ones they need to be paying specific attention to.
Okay, so I just sent it. Hi, Vaish. It is 5 criteria, and what's is really important is this is the only time we're evaluating them. So take a look at your answers to those questions that apply to those criteria, and consider, is there proof I can provide? So can everybody see those answers?
I think they can. I'm just putting them in the question box again.
Okay.
And 4.5. And I will also send that to everyone too.
Good.
All right. Good.
Okay. And
Thanks.
if you could go on to the next slide. This is just what the portfolio item looks like. And so what we want you to do is in the criteria number, tell us which criteria you are submitting it as evidence of. Okay. And then the link goes into the second box. It's a place where the assessors can go to find that. Amelia can help you with figuring out a Dropbox or something like that so you can provide those links.
Yeah.
And then the description is you telling us what we're looking for. It might be that only one page, you know, maybe it's a 35-page document, but there's something on page 12 that you want us to notice. Tell us that. Don't make it hard for the assessors. So just make sure that it's clear to us what we're looking for.
So Wendy, I also wanted to jump in. We have gone to links now, mainly because it's much easier for us to just click on it and the assessors can immediately get there. Wendy, I don't know if you want to let people know how many people review these applications and everything else and the amount of time spent, but really making it easier for the assessor is going to be your key. I just wondered if you want to give a little bit more input there.
Actually, if you want to go on to the next slide, I have hints for successful applications. So hint number one is make sure that you're very familiar with the core competencies and the criteria. That is the basis for the certification program. We are looking for all of them. They are all essential, and so you need to be able to answer the mail on all of them. So get familiar with them, and then pay very close attention to each question and answer it in a way that makes it very clear how you meet the criteria that is being assessed. And I'd like to invite you to make the assessor's job as easy as possible by being very clear how you meet the criteria. I ask you to please honor the word and page limits. The assessors are working very hard to find the evidence. And if they can't find what they're looking for, it is only going to hurt your ability to get certified. So to the extent that you can make it easy, that's why the page limits are there, is to make sure that they don't have to read reams and reams of stuff to find your evidence. And finally, please take your time and proofread your work. Criteria 4.4 is communicate effectively in writing, and they will be looking at your application as a whole as evidence that you have good writing skills. So put it down, sleep on it, look at it again the next day, make sure that you're not submitting anything that has typos or, you know, problems that need editing. So does that help? Yes. To date, 3 assessors have looked at every application. We're hoping eventually that isn't necessary. But I can tell you if one assessor looks at it and says, no, you don't meet the criteria, then we will at least have one other assessor look at it to come to the same conclusion. If they disagree, a third assessor will look at it to be the tiebreaker. Our job is really to try to find the evidence we're looking for, and your job is to provide that evidence.
Yeah. Thanks, Wendy. And I know you're going to get to it, but just the length of time it takes to do this as well, and the importance of taking that time.
Yeah. Well, I'll just do that right now. I think probably 40 hours is a good estimate of how much time it takes to fill out the application. I may be overestimating. I know I am not certified. I'm the chair of the task force, and it's taken this much effort to get the program up and running that I myself have not been through it. We've had 2 versions of the application so far in the United States, and I have filled out both of them. And I have to say that there is this point where you're thinking, really? Oh my God. And so even I felt that. But I also want you to know that there's something really powerful about understanding that this professional certification program is looking at the body of your work and assessing it against criteria that were developed by your peers who do work in this field. and have told us that they are all essential. And so there's something really powerful about having the opportunity to put the body of your life's work online for someone to review. And it shouldn't be an easy exercise. I mean, if you can describe what you've done in just a few hours, maybe you're not ready for certification. So please don't take exception to it. We didn't want to build a program that wasn't worthy of IEP2's reputation. We wanted a program that was worth what the organization is all about. So I hope that helps. So let's move on to some more pragmatic points. The fees. There is a $300 non-refundable fee to have your application reviewed, and that is due upon submission of your application. That basically recovers the costs that IEP2 assumes in having those applications reviewed by assessors. So we're not making a lot of money off of it, trust me. The assessment fee is $2,925. It is also non-refundable. It's invoiced upon your invitation to attend the assessment center, and it's due no later than 1 week prior to the assessment center. A word about why they are separated, and that is because we didn't want to get in a situation where somebody paid the whole fee and then figured out midway that they really weren't ready to move on. So the $300 is a worthwhile investment to have a professional, have assessors say, hey, yeah, we think you are ready to move on. So it's actually sort of affordable if you look at it from that standpoint. So next slide. I should point out as well that the budget is very heavily scrutinized, and we are a membership organization with really only two primary sources of revenue, membership dues and conference registration fees. And we were charged with the responsibility of building a new program that doesn't cost IEP2 money. So we're trying very hard to make sure that we recover what the program costs, and that's why the fees are set where they are. So here's some key dates for 2017. The application period opened on June 9th. And the deadline for participating in an assessment center in 2017 is August 11th. Candidates will be notified whether their applications were successful by September 1st. And if they were successful, they will get the case study assignment on that date. Case study responses are due 5 weeks later on October 6th. They are also a bit of work to prepare. I believe it's a total of 17 pages submission, but it includes a budget and a schedule. So at any rate, that takes a bit of time. That's why we give you 5 weeks to prepare the response. And then the assessment center, spelled in Canadian, is November 17th and 18th. And then applicants will be provided results of their assessment at the assessment center no later than December 9th. So after the assessment center, successful candidates will be asked to sign a pledge that obligates them to go forth and practice in compliance with the core values in the Code of Ethics, among some other things. Ongoing requirements for maintaining certification include 20 hours of service to IEP2 on an annual basis. That can be performed by serving on committees, serving on a board, either at the chapter level or at the affiliate level, writing articles for newsletters, preparing a conference session for a conference session, conducting a webinar, whatever works for you. We're not going to tell you how to do it, but we would like for you to stay engaged in the organization and its success. In addition, we want to make sure that people continue to grow professionally, so we ask for evidence of 12 hours of professional development each year. That can be accomplished through attending conferences, attending webinars, taking training of some sort. So lots of opportunities for meeting the professional development opportunities. In addition, we ask people to recertify every 3 years. It's a paper application that demonstrates that you continue to work in the field. We don't want people out there claiming certification that are actually working in some other field or retired and taking a sailboat trip around the world, although that sounds nice. But at any rate, we really want this to be an active certification program that is only held by people that are actively participating in the field. And then, if you are interested, you can apply for master's certification at your convenience. We've made some changes in the program recently, and we're only assessing the certification, the CP3 level at the assessment center, and master's certification comes after that assessment center. So we can go on. Thank you. So the master's certification process is a paper application that is reviewed by assessors. The cost is $425 to have that assessment or to have that application reviewed, and it is composed of 10 mandatory criteria and at least one of 7 optional criteria. I should explain that in the beginning in our pilot program, the criteria were stated with 2 performance levels or 2 performance standards, and it was things like good listening skills and excellent listening skills, and it proved to be very difficult for the assessors to discern the differences between those 2 quality standards, and we were concerned that it would appear that the assessors were being subjective. And so we decided to fully extricate the MCP3 criteria from the criteria that are being evaluated at the CP3 level. And so these mandatory criteria are things that we believe anyone who is really functioning at the master's level should have. So there's 7 on this slide and 3 more on the next slide. The 7 include demonstrating that you've worked with even more techniques. You'll recall that the CP3 level requires only 10 techniques in 3 levels of the spectrum. For the master's level, we're looking for 10 more techniques and at least 4 levels of the spectrum. We're also looking for evidence that someone has worked on a highly complex project, and by complex we're meaning something that's taken a long period of time, involved diverse stakeholders, perhaps involved in an emotionally charged situation, but something that's sort of, not your average P2 project, something that's complex. So the rest of these are the importance of evaluation, making sure that we know how to use the public input and decision-making process, conflict management skills, etc. So these are criteria that the task force and our membership felt all people functioning at a master's level should have. The last 3 are on the next slide. So the ability to integrate new techniques and technologies with traditional techniques, the ability to customize P2 techniques to meet the sponsors' or stakeholders' needs, and adaptation of communication products for diverse audiences. So those are 3 more criteria that we're looking for proof that you can function at that level, at the master's level. And in addition, next slide, there are some options. Approach was developed because often people that have been working in this field for a long time develop a specialty or a special area of expertise. And so we're not expecting that someone would demonstrate more than one of these optional criteria. At least one of them is adequate. Could be that you're really good at developing specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-sensitive objectives. Perhaps you have certification in project management from the Project Management Institute. Perhaps you can document lessons learned that you've shared with a project sponsor, etc. So you have to have all 10 of the mandatory criteria and at least one of the optional criteria to be eligible for master's certification. And so I think this is my last slide. I just wanted to show you what the certificate looks like if you are become certified. It looks the same for both levels of certification. It's just that the label is different. The pledge that we ask people to sign is on the left side. So you hang it on your wall, and this shows that you pledge to practice in compliance with these statements. So I will actively engage in and support IEP2 and its mission. I will conduct public participation work that is values-based, decision-oriented, and goal-driven, etc. So this is something that hangs on the wall and shows that you are practicing going forward in full compliance with this pledge. So that's what I was planning on presenting today, but I am open for questions.
I was going to say, Wendy, we heard from some of our CP3 graduates on the weekend as well that they have every intention of including the certificate when they send in their RFPs response as well, just to show what they've attained. So
Yeah.
just not just on the wall, it can be absolutely used and sent out as well. So any questions from anybody that is on the line right now? Here we go. Is there a minimum number of years of experience that you look for? That's a great question.
You know, we really grappled with that. And in reality, most people that do public participation work kind of got in slowly. You know, I know in terms of my job description, it was just sort of a little bit of what I did for a long time before I was really fully in. And we therefore decided that we didn't think years of experience was really the right way to approach this. Some people might be lucky enough to get a full-time public participation job straight out of the chute and do really good work and probably can demonstrate their performance within 2 or 3 years, maybe even. Some of us, most of us, I think it takes a little longer to get enough experience to be able to meet those quality standards for all of the 29 criteria.
So the answer is no. We don't look for years of experience, which is always very interesting. Is there anybody else out there that has any other questions on how this is run? I think one of the things that I wanted to mention, Wendy, is we truly want people to be successful. I mean, this is one of the reasons that we're running today's webinar, to really walk you through the application process so that you can see how things are done. But don't hesitate to ask us if there's questions. We don't want you to be out there on your own saying, I'm looking at this question and I don't know what it means. Ask us. My information is on the information kit, and you can certainly get hold of me. I will subsequently follow up with one of our task force members to get more clarity if that's what you request. But we really do want you to be successful. As Wendy said, it takes a while to put together this application, and so, you know, the other thing we recommend is get started now, so that you're giving yourself the time to reflect on what you're putting together, and also that way if you've got questions you can send them out to us and we can get you a response back pretty quick. The other thing that we will do is, as we get questions, we'll also add things to the FAQ. So if you're wondering if there's anything else that's out there that you might need to be thinking about, the FAQ is a good place to look.
It's frequently asked questions, and it's up on the certification website.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We will be posting a recording, won't we?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, of this webinar as well. And, you know, I would rather have you ask questions than decide not to apply. We're really proud of the people that have participated so far. We're really proud of the program. And it's quite an accomplishment when someone gets certified, and it's real bragging rights. We will celebrate folks that get certified at our conferences, and so we'd really like to be able to stand up and put your name on the list of people that have accomplished certification.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions out there, Wendy, so hopefully you've responded to everyone's needs. And as we've said, the recording will go up on the website probably today, but I'll also be sending it out to you so that you'll have your own link to the webinar, and ask questions if you have any concerns. So really appreciate you joining us. Wendy, a big thank you to you and your certification task force team for moving forward on this. I think, as Wendy would tell you, we're getting there. The process that took place this weekend worked very smoothly and went very well. So we're definitely getting there.
if it's any evidence, let's just say the first two assessment centers, at the end of the assessment center, we were not able to make up our minds about anybody. But this last weekend in Calgary, we had firm decisions at the end of the assessment center. So it's proof that we're getting better at asking for what we need.
Exactly.
And people are getting better at giving us what we're asking for. And so hopefully you will benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they will. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Wendy. Really appreciate this, and we look forward to seeing your application. And just in case you were wondering, the actual location, the assessment center, will be determined by who the applicants are. So if everyone comes from the West Coast, then we'll try and get something in the West Coast. If everyone comes from the East Coast, we'll try to do it in the East Coast or Central. So we do look at the applicants, and we will choose an assessment center which hopefully works best for the majority of our candidates. So thank you so much for joining us. Good luck, have fun, enjoy, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.